If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and as always, we've got a great show for you this evening. We're going to start things off here in just a moment with a great panel discussion here on Coach's Corner segment. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be joined once again by a very special guest, the president of the Golf Heritage Society, Dr. Bernacki. He'll be joining me once again on the program a little bit later on, so I hope you'll stick around. I've got a lot of interesting things to talk about with him. But first, we're going to talk about some very interesting things here on the panel discussion. But let me introduce the guys, and we'll bring them out and get into this evening's discussion on Coach's Corner. First up is John Decker. He's the Director of Instruction at Medallion Club in Columbus, Ohio. He's also a senior editor and top 25 instructor for Golf Tips Magazine, and a former head instructor at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando. He was also the 2015 Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year, and is author of Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, which of course includes an accompanying Bible study. And he's also available for public speaking, so you can hear more about that a little bit later on. He'll give you all the details of how to reach out to him if you're interested in that. Also joining on the panel tonight is Jim Endicott. He's been teaching this great game of golf for over 38 years. He's a former Golf Digest Schools general manager and a 7-time PGA Award winner, including the 2022 North Florida PGA Section Patriot Award and 2 North Florida PGA Youth Development Awards. He's currently the Director of Instruction at the Royal St. Cloud Golf Links in St. Cloud, Florida, and he's also a top 25 instructor and contributor to Golf Tips Magazine. So, John and Jim, welcome to tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Ted. It's great to be here.
All right, appreciate it. So we're going to get into a couple of different areas. We'll do talk about maybe some troubleshooting areas that get you guys to help some folks with. And then we're also going to talk about really some life lessons that we can take away from the golf course, and maybe even a little vice versa. So I think that, I've said this many, many times on the show over the years, that I think there's so many valuable life lessons that you can learn from playing golf. And I know we do as teaching professionals. We get to work with a variety of different students of all different levels. So there's always some great opportunities for us to learn from them as well as teaching them how to play this great game. And I think one of the things, and John, I'm going to come to you, since we're starting things off in order. One of the ones I think is honesty and integrity. And I think this, more so than really any other sport out there, golf has really amplified this in its roots, if you will, is there. And there's a couple of reasons. Obviously, we're sort of a self-governing sport, if you will. When you're out in the golf course, unlike many other sports, you don't have referees and you don't have a committee out there sort of monitoring to the same degree with the other sports. So really, what can somebody learn from this game about really more having more integrity and obviously improve, the level of honesty that the person is? What is it about the game that keeps us honest?
Well, Ted, this is a great question. First of all, thank you for having us on the show. And, Jim, I'm looking forward to being on with you tonight. When you think of honesty and integrity in the game of golf, I mean, you're right. It is a game where you know deep down in your soul, usually, and there's a few cases where you could commit a penalty or do something wrong that you didn't realize was maybe not a penalty, or you did something you didn't, for example, maybe grounding your club in the bunker by accident or something like that. But all in all, in the game of golf, you want to police your group when you're out there. You're playing with a group and a foursome, and so it's up to each person to make sure and protect the field and make sure that the people that they're playing with are adhering to the rules. But there's the inside, we all know, and if you know the rules of golf and you've played it long enough, you know whether you are following the rules or not. Simply moving your ball in the rough if you've got a bad lie, or counting every shot, or making sure, not giving yourself a 2-inch putt and actually tapping the ball in and having it go in the hole. Those are things that, I think are great examples of in the game and being able to pass on, to life lessons, especially when I'm working with junior golfers. That's one of the things that we talk about is that, you've got the ball must be holed out. That's a real simple thing. And so not just giving ourselves a putt and things like that. Those are some examples. There's so many examples when it comes to honesty and integrity of the game. But I think back to one time when I was watching the Ryder Cup, and I was watching Davis Love, and Davis Love hit a ball, and he had a horrible lie in the rough, and it was on the last hole. And he was actually in a situation where when he took his stance, he could possibly stand on a sprinkler head, which would have allowed him by the rules of golf, if he were standing on the sprinkler head, to actually get relief and take a drop. And he took his normal stance, and his foot was within a half inch of the sprinkler head. And I remember Roger Maltby, who was covering it, saying, there's a lot of guys that would have stood on that sprinkler head and said, this is my stance, because he was with the referee, but he was with the referee, and he said, no, here's my normal stance. And it was not, his normal stance was not putting him in a situation where he was standing on the sprinkler head, and he had to play it out of that horrible lie and ended up losing the hole. That's an example right there that he knew in his heart. I can only imagine what he was going through, but Davis Love knew in his heart that if he had essentially cheated and said, no, this is where my normal stance is, and gotten relief and gotten a good lie and hit a really good shot, he would have had to have lived with that for the rest of his life. And so those are the things, and that, you're talking about one of the most pressure-packed situations you can be in tournament golf. And so Roger Maltby actually said there's a lot of guys that would have taken their liberties there with that. So those are great examples. There's 1,000 more of them, but great question, and something that we all try to strive for when we're on the golf course, to be honest and know that our score that we're putting on the scorecard is the actual score that we got.
Yeah, and you couldn't have really come up with a better person to use an example. I've always had a lot of respect for Davis Love, as a player, but and not just because of his physical abilities, but just his integrity out in the golf course. He was always somebody I really enjoyed watching, and really envied how he conducted himself. He was definitely was one of the good ones that I watched over the years as he went up the ladder on the PGA Tour. And I think sort of dialing back a little bit about really what I'm getting at here is, there are so many times, and that's a good example of where somebody took a better route, because he could have very easily gone the other way and said, yeah, this is how I take my stance, and gotten that relief. But he obviously had integrity. He knew that was not, for him anyways, was not right. And that's not to say that if somebody else did something different that necessarily they were cheating, but again, he believed in this is the game. This is an unfortunate situation, and if there is legitimate relief that I can take, I'm going to do it. But I'm not going to sort of push the boundaries here. And when you factor in what these guys play with, the amount of money even back then, what they're playing for, I agree with you. It's very easy for somebody to take a liberty where maybe they need not to. But this goes to the integrity of the golfer. If they're willing to push the boundary and skirt that line, if you will, in their golf game, then you can bet that they're more than likely going to do that out in real life as well. And that tells you a lot. I've seen a lot of people really push those boundaries on a golf course, and it tells you a lot about the individual in their real life, what they're like. And so I think that's a great example that you used, John. Thank you. Jim, we're going to hit another one, and this is one I really like as well, and that is really learning to accept the uncontrollable. And what I mean by that is we often find ourselves both on the course and even in life with some very difficult times. Things or situations occur, particularly on the golf course, making sometimes play extremely difficult. As an example, maybe you've hit a shot that you felt was perfect, but the result was awful. So sometimes things are uncontrollable, but it's how we deal with those situations that really so maybe give us an example if you want, or talk about that as well, because we know what's going to happen. It happens to even the best of the players. But again, this is something that how we handle ourselves on the golf course during these difficult times can, again, come out through life as well. So have at it.
Yes, thank you, Ted. And John, it's great to be on with you as well, and appreciate you having me here, Ted. Yes, when you play in this game, the ball bounces so many different ways. I've seen so often where we hit a shot, and as you described, you feel like that's just perfect, and it hits something and it bounds off into the water or out of bounds or whatever the case may be. And we just have to accept that and realize that we did what we can. We did our best to hit that shot where we wanted, and there was something there that said, no, it's not going to be what we want based on where it landed. But on the flip side, there are times when we hit a shot and it's not exactly what we want, and it bounces the correct way. I think of just at the U.S. Open this last year, Scotty Scheffler. He hit a shot on, I believe it was the 16th hole, and he holed it out from the fairway. And the interesting thing was, at the interview, he commented that he had pulled the shot some 10 yards offline, and yet it went in. So golf is so great in that it gives it takes, but it also gives back. And we can learn that life does the same. Sometimes you're going down a path and you think you're traveling the right direction, and something bounces you another way and says this is a better opportunity for you, and you follow that path, and it works out the best for you. So golf and life are very similar and parallel each other so much. Good happens, not good happens, and we have to accept them both and learn from both. Regardless of what the result is, there's a learning opportunity to be had. So we can control what we can control, and there's things we cannot control. And what we can control of the uncontrollable is how we react to it, what we learn from it, and how we're going to proceed moving forward.
Yeah, well said, Jim. And it's we often hear that expression, Bob got a member's bounce on that shot. He had a good shot going, or maybe a bad shot going on there, and ended up getting a good result because he was a member and it got that favorable bounce. But that's not always going to happen. And I think you hit a key point is how we react and accept those times when we cannot control. And again, certainly there are things that you can control, but there are times when you can't. And I think that really is what makes golf so interesting, because you never know. Again, you can hit a pure shot and it can be going right down the middle of the fairway, and maybe it ricochets off a sprinkler head and takes a bad bounce somewhere, or whatever the case is, and ends up in a more difficult situation. So you never know what you get, and if you can accept that and learn to control the things you can and accept the things that you can't and learn from it, there's always, I think, a learning opportunity when you're out in the golf course, and I think that's something that you can also take out into life as well. Great points, Jim. Thank you. John, back to you on this one. And who would have ever thought that problem solving is a skill that you can learn in golf? But whether you're finding yourself trying to manipulate your way around the course on a windy day, or maybe the golf course is riddled with bunkers and you need to plot out some sort of strategy, you've got to learn to develop and become a good problem solver, because you're going to, as we just pointed out, you're going to be faced with a lot of difficult times. So what are some tips that maybe you can give on how we can do that and become a little bit more intuitive, but also a little bit better at handling whatever situation we may be faced with? How can we, because again, we're never going to know sometimes if we get a favorable bounce or not, but problem solving is a skill that can be certainly learned on the golf course. What are some examples that maybe you can think of that might be able to be applied?
Well, the first thing I do when it comes to problem solving is I always want to have a plan B. You can't go into a round of golf expecting every shot to be perfect, every bounce to be good, and every hole to be played well. So there's times when I go out there, and when I'm playing a practice round before a tournament, I'll go through and look at every hole, and I'll say, here's what I want to try to do on this hole. But here's my plan B. My plan B might be, one day I played a tournament recently this summer, and when I got there to play the practice round, the hole was downwind. And so I hit a hybrid off the tee because it was a really tight fairway, and I hit a really nice shot and said, okay, that's the club I'm going to play. Well, the next day, the wind totally switched, and it was right in my face, and I knew I couldn't hit the hybrid because I would have a very long iron into a green that was covered with, there was water in front of the green, and I knew that wouldn't be ideal, so I knew that I was going to have to hit my driver. So those are situations where you make those adjustments. Other situations are, in plan B would be when I maybe struggling with my driver off the tee, is I'll go to my hybrid or I'll go to my 3-wood, depending on which, having that club, that go-to club that you can kind of fall back on. Good players always have that. Jack Nicklaus had the 1-iron, and, when he got on a hole that didn't fit his eye, or if he was struggling, and I've heard many stories about, in fact, Bob Rotella talks about this in his book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, where Nicklaus hit a bad drive on the first hole and put his driver away and hit 1-irons and 3-woods the other 17 holes and won the tournament. And he just didn't feel like he had his driver swing that day, and he put it away. That's an example of the greatest, tournament player to ever play the game, having the patience and the discipline to not try to force something that he knew wasn't there. And golf is so funny because one day you've got your swing and the next day you don't. And then the last thing about problem solving is having a good short game. Your short game is like I always use the analogy about football teams. If you have a good defense in football, you're going to be in every single game that you play in. If you don't have a good defense, you're going to have to rely strictly on your offense. So when I go into a tournament, I want my short game to be razor sharp. And I know that if I have a good short game, I'm going to score well when I'm playing well. But when I'm not playing well, I'm going to hold my score in and not have big numbers, stay away from doubles and triple bogeys. So those are examples that I can think of off the top of my head when it comes to problem solving. That I think, are great examples in the physical realm. And then in the mental realm is basically having every hole played out in your mind before you play before you play a hole, especially if you're playing the same golf course over and over again, is knowing, okay, this is where I want to go. This is what I'm trying to do. But when I get out there on the golf course and I'm not in the position I need to be in, maybe I'm not in position A, knowing where the bailout areas are, knowing where the layup areas are, things like that. Those are examples of mentally being sharp as well. So golf is more than a physical sport. It's a mental side. And a lot of times you can really save a lot of shots if you're thinking well, if you're making good decisions. And I've always said the most important decision that you're going to ever make in golf is the decision that you make after you hit a poor shot. When you hit a poor shot, getting the ball back into play and being smart. Those are examples of mentally being strong, not trying to force the issue and not running up your score.
Again, well said, John. Some great points, and exactly right. You've got to be, you've got to develop, and it is a skill, and it takes time. You know, some people may be naturally good problem solvers in their personal life and are able to translate that onto the golf course, and that's fantastic. But not everybody has, developed that skill very early on, and it's something that takes time and obviously a lot of practice doing. But once you do, and you're faced with a variety of different situations, those problem-solving skills are going to, be tapped into and are going to serve you very well as you, again, navigate the golf course. So great points. Jim, back to you. One of the things that we also need to do is creating and holding focus. You've got to be a very focused person if you want to improve in golf. This term multitasking gets thrown around quite a bit, but the truth of the matter is it takes an extreme amount of mental and emotional concentration to be able to last for 18 holes. You're out there, anywhere from 3.5 to 5 hours, depending on how you're playing or where. This is another, I guess, skill, if you will, that you want to be able to develop. And there's a number of things that we want to be focused on. We're out there. Maybe you can touch on a few of them here.
Yes. I think focus and problem solving kind of go hand in hand. We have to have an attention to the problem so that we can solve it, but we have to be focused on our objective, which is going through our process on each and every shot so that we can put our best foot forward and execute in the best manner we can. And so focus comes down to having a routine of here's what I'm going to do for every shot. And if I'm engaged in the shot, I don't have to be engaged between the shot. And so having that kind of, let's call it the rest period in between shots, gives us a chance to have our laser focus when we're in the shot. And so I'll give an example of myself. I was out playing golf with several of my high school players, and as you said, some days we don't have it. John, you said sometimes our golf swing isn't working. Well, it wasn't working that day. And I'm on a par 5 hole. It was about 525 yards. And I topped the ball off the tee, and it rolled barely past the teeing ground. And as I got to my ball, the very first thing I did was I grabbed my rangefinder, and I looked for my yardage. Well, the players that I was playing with, they all kind of laughed at me. What are you doing? There is no way you're going to get to the green. I said, I know, but I'm going to give myself a plan to get there the most efficient manner. And so I stayed in my process, stayed in my focus, if you will, regardless of whether I had 400 yards to the green or I had 40 yards to the green. And so it helps you to eliminate what had just happened in terms of hitting a poor shot. And I'm happy to say I went on and made par on the hole. And it really taught them a lesson of the importance of staying in that process and not being concerned with the result of either the hole, the round, or the shot that you just played. Eliminate the result, stay in the process of what I have to do to execute now. I'll stay focused. Mm-hmm. I won't let the other stuff bother me. Also enhances my focus more, and it enhances the ability to solve the problem that is at hand. Each and every shot is an opportunity to be successful versus standing there, and oftentimes we hear players are worried about not being successful. Well, what if you are successful? Have a process, stay engaged to what you want to do, go try and do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you have an opportunity to be successful again, regardless of where that shot ended up.
Again, well said, Jim. You're exactly right. And I think one of the things that really differentiates the pros that we see on television and our everyday amateur golfer is the ability that the pros have to focus while they're out there. They're focusing on the task at hand. They're not thinking about past holes. They're not thinking, they certainly may, prior to the round may have a strategy. They may think about a hole or two ahead if they know that they're in a difficult situation. But it's very limited thought process. They're focusing on the shot at hand. They're saying, I'm in the moment. I need to focus on that. It doesn't matter what's happened, and I can't, what's happened in the past, I can't change that, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so all I have is right now. So it's very important to be able to focus on that and to really not allow other, things creep in your mind, and particularly not allow yourself to be distracted. And I know that sometimes can be a difficult thing. I mean, we see that with the pros, cameras clicking in the background or unruly fans, sometimes blurring things out. And that's a challenge that they have to face. But the everyday golfer has it much easier, but for some reason still manages to get stymied and is unable to focus their best. So I think, if we can learn to focus on that, again, these are skills that are really interchangeable, both on the course and away from the course in your business life. If you're learning to focus on the task at hand, it's going to help you in both areas of your life. So some great points, I think, on all levels, all the way through. We're going to switch discussions, and we're going to get into talking about really troubleshooting and talking about some specific things. And I think what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you an example of a variety of things that are going to happen, and maybe what we can do is first you can explain what we're referring to and what are some options on how to correct that. So we want to all hit, John, I'm coming back to you. So we want to hit obviously some more solid shots, and one of the things that we get here often is casting in your golf swing. So how do we first off, what is casting? What does it mean? What's that term mean? And how do we stop that? What's a remedy for that to be able to eliminate that in our golf swing?
Well, this is probably one of the most common things that we as instructors see, and that is the early release of the club where you lose energy. And casting, the reason that the term is kind of like casting, like a fisherman casting. If I'm standing there and I'm a right-handed player and I cast were to take a fishing rod and cast it kind of over my right shoulder, that release of the hands up in the air, the energy of the rod would, send the weight and the lure out into the water. You do that in your golf swing and you have that early release. You want to be releasing down through the ball, not prior to hitting the ball. 95% of the time, it's because of the grip. And so the first thing that I do when I see someone that has early release or casting, whichever, those are the basically synonymous terms, the first thing I do is I check their grip. And I start with their left hand, and I make sure that they've got the V of their left hand pointing toward their right shoulder if they're a right-handed golfer. And then I make sure that the right hand V is also pointing to the right shoulder. I make sure that they're holding the club in the fingers and not in the palms of their hand. And so if you do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to square up the club face. And the most important thing that you need to understand about when you're casting, you're going to produce fat shots, thin shots. Your driver's going to tend to go to the right. You're going to lose a lot of distance. If you do hit it solid, you're going to have a really high ball flight where the ball kind of goes way up in the air and doesn't go anywhere. So when you strengthen that grip, all of a sudden you're going to start hitting the ball more solid, and your ball is probably going to go left, because most students who cast they're going to come a little bit more over the top. They're going to have more of an outside to in swing path. Not all. Some will come more from the inside and cast and hit it thin, but most will come over the top. So learning how to hold the club properly, that is the first thing that I look at. And I think that's the major reason why most slicers and most golfers who, when they first learn the game, they'll hit the ball to the right. They lose so much distance because of their grip and because of that early release.
Again, some great points. I think it's important that we understand the cause and obviously the effect it has on our swing before we can really address those areas. I think you're exactly right. A lot of people do this, especially early on. Beginning golfers particularly this is a very common among many golfers, especially first starting out before they understand the golf swing a little bit better, and in a lot of cases before they've even taken lessons or very early on in the lesson part of it. But I think that understanding really what causes a lot of these things part of the battle. And I think that as students, as they're working with us over time and developing their skill and developing their game overall, if they understand what causes that, if it happens out in the golf course, if they know what causes it and they understand what the adjustments are that need to be made, then they're able to do that on their own. And I'm not suggesting when you're in the middle of a tournament or something to start messing around. But when you understand, if you're practicing or warming up and you see these things happening, if you understand what's causing it and why it's happening, it makes the process of getting back to a better swing that much easier. So I think when you understand things a little bit better right from the get-go, then I think it makes it easier to be resolving some of the issues. But great points. Jim, this is an area that, we've heard, we hear more often, I think, from the pros, but I think we all get into this, and that is the golf slump. And we need a plan to get back on track. So, whether you're a weekend warrior or you're playing on the PGA or LPGA tour, every once in a while we get in a bit of a slump. And I know sometimes it might not necessarily be so much on the physical side as it is as equally on the mental side. But what do we do when we find ourselves in a bit of a slump? How do we turn things around and get back on track?
Well, there's a couple things we can take a look at. Frequently, what happens in a slump is somebody goes immediately to their ability to hit the golf ball, their technique and how to hit it. I just read an article just recently about a player who what they were talking about not hitting their golf ball very well, and they asked, what are you going to do for your golf swing at this point? And the response was, and this was a tour player, and the response was, I'm going to go play golf. And the interviewer was kind of perplexed by that response that you didn't hit it very well, but you're going to go play golf. And the player said, I have been doing this for a very long time. I'm pretty good at what I do in terms of technique. My ability to execute was off. And I need to go execute. I don't need to go reinvent what I have learned over the last 25 years of playing the game of golf. And so sometimes what we do is we approach the fix to a slump with the wrong fix. Yes, it could be technique, and we need to go see our coach, and we need to work with them to understand how or what maybe is causing a repeating problem with my ball flight. But most importantly, I need to be able to identify in that ball flight what is causing that so I can work on it. And we need fresh look at how we work on it. Maybe I've done a particular drill for a long time for a part of my golf swing. And sometimes that drill isn't as effective as time progresses, so I need a different drill. So it's important to go to your coach and have a look at it and work on it. But it's also very important to go out there and play the game and work on through it and realize that your expectations may need to be a little bit different as I'm struggling, but going back again to not worrying about the result, but worrying about the process, going to the task at hand. And by getting the task at hand and the process working, times our technique and our ability to play come around in and of itself. So I think the slumps get exacerbated because we get so focused on what's my score? Why didn't I score the way I wanted to? Well, you didn't score the way you wanted to because the little things that give you that good score you didn't do. You need to stay focused in process. This is what I have to do right now, right here, in this situation. And if you stay there and you've played the game long enough, that technique's going to work for you. Now, if I'm a newer player and that sort and I'm slumping, maybe there's more time spent on technique to get it back. But keep playing the game and keep in the process, and oftentimes things work out for you by doing that.
You know, there's some really great points that you raise here that I want to really emphasize. And one of the first ones that you said is, you know, the players are very quick, and I'm not talking about the tour players, but just the average golfer is very quick to automatically assume that there's a swing issue. It may not be that. You know, they're monkeying with their grip all of a sudden, or they're changing their stance, assuming that that's causing the problem. And I like your example where, you know, a tour player said, I'm going to get back out there because I've been working on these things for so long. I know what my swing can do. I know how to work everything. I don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there is something that needs to be addressed. And then also going back to your coach or your teacher professional that you've been working with is let them get a fresh set of eyes and let them look at and see what's going on. They may be seeing something that you're not, but to just arbitrarily start changing, which we see so many recreational golfers do, just all of a sudden going out there and changing their grip and changing this and that, moving the ball all around. And the next thing you know, they've taken what might be an honest error or a unique situation. Now they've amplified it even that much more because they've now changed so many things. Or a lot of times what they've done is maybe they've been working on a new grip, or they've been working on better posture, and all of a sudden, because things aren't going the way they want, they automatically default to old bad habits because it's comfortable for them. It's something they know and they're familiar with. They've been doing it that way for years. So I think it's very, very important to isolate, and the only way you can do that is obviously to be out in the golf course, but you need to get with your golf professional, especially for the amateurs, and let them take a look and see if they can isolate what the problem is before you start making drastic changes and making what could be a very easy fix into a much more complicated. So some great points that you raised, and I just really wanted to sort of put a point on some of those issues. John, this is one that we hear, I mean, to the point of nausea, I think, in the teaching profession, and that is, you know, adding distance, adding yardage. You know, there's a lot of theories out there, you know, grip it and rip it and that sort of thing, but really there's some realistic ways. If you want to get more distance, particularly out of your driver, there's certain things that you need to do. Let's talk about a few of them.
Well, this is probably, like you said, one of the top two to three things that we as instructors hear when students come to us, especially with the driver. You know, the first thing that I want to talk about, you know, is the tee height, making sure to tee the ball high enough. That is one thing that you want to make sure, because you're trying to catch the ball on the upswing. If you tee the ball real low, you're going to tend to hit down on the ball. You're going to tend to put more spin on the ball. Typically, that leads to a slice. Not always, but mostly for the average golfer. Making sure that you have a wide base so your feet are wide. I see a lot of students who come in who have real narrow stances, and they wonder why they don't hit the ball very far. You need a wide base. That allows you to make a fuller turn, get the club back more. Those are things. But honestly, I think the thing that would help everyone get more distance is to get in better shape. If you are out of shape, if you do not have the flexibility, if you do not have the strength, if you do not have the core strength, I don't care how many lessons you take, you're not going to get the maximum out of your potential. You might gain 5 yards, but if you're out of shape and you got in shape, and, you know, doing some golf fitness, going to someone who's TPI certified, I think is a great way to really improve and get clubhead speed. That's what the elite tour players are doing now on both tours, men, women, live, wherever. All these guys and gals are in fantastic shape. if you get in better shape, I think that is something that would help every golfer. Plus, your quality of life is going to be better. So golf shape is one thing. And then the last thing is your equipment. I would encourage everyone to go to your local PGA golf professional and at least at a bare minimum do a driver fitting. Now, ideally, you would like to do a fitting with all of your clubs. If you buy a new set of irons and you've been fit within the last 5 to 10 years, you should be fine. But if you have not changed your driver in the last 5 to 10 years, you need to really upgrade your driver and your equipment from that standpoint. Because as we get older, a lot of times I have this with some of my students. They're reaching the close. They're in their high 70s, low 80s as far as their age, and they're using men's regular flex. And I'm like, it's time to go to a senior flex. It's time to start, going with the softer flex. Or on the other hand, you get somebody that's maybe I'll get a 35 or 40-year-old who's playing the game, and they're playing with shafts that are way too weak for them, and they're hitting it all over the place. So, I'm telling them, hey, you need to go to something stronger. So getting a fitting done with your driver is a must. I think if you want to get the most out of your driver and getting the most distance on the course.
Again, some great points, John. You're right. Number one, you've got to get in better shape, and that doesn't mean you have to get into the gym and become a bodybuilder or that sort of thing. Sometimes that can be detrimental, actually, to becoming a good golfer. If you're bulking up and getting too much muscle on there, sometimes that's has an adverse effect in the golf swing. But you've definitely got to be in shape, and if you're, and it's not just so much just the physical part of looking good and strengthening in that, but it's also about stamina. I mean, I've seen many golfers, even young golfers, that come the turn are starting to lose a little steam because they don't have energy. Now, I know that's not always tied to the physical. Sometimes it's nutritional. They're not eating the best food that's giving them that sustained energy. So there's a lot of things that you have to look at. But also, too, the equipment, as you touched on as well. You've got to look at the equipment. If you want to add those extra yards, you've got to take a look at the equipment and make sure that you're not using your grandfather's equipment. It's nice to be nostalgic and to be able to say, hey, I'm hitting my grandfather's driver, but it might be 35 years old, and the shaft is not necessarily up to speed. And if you're just out, hacking around, that might be fine, and you're somebody that likes to, do that. But if you really want to improve the game, you've got to make sure you're playing with the right equipment as well. So some great points, John, that you touched on here. Jim, this is one, too, that you don't really hear a lot being talked about with golfers, but I think it's one that certainly needs to be addressed, and that is we hear the term sort of deceleration in the golf swing. What's typically causing that, and how do we help a golfer that finds themselves? We see that particularly in the short game. They're maybe chipping onto the green, and they take a good back swing, but they feel that they've gone a little too far, and all of a sudden they decelerate. So what's causing that, and what can we do to help people sort of eliminate that from their golf swing? Because that can really cause a lot of problems, and we can touch on a few of them.
Well, I find deceleration in the golf swing, whether it's a full swing or the short game, it's more of the view of how the player sees they need to get the golf ball into the air. And frequently what they're seeing is they feel as though they have to get, and I hear this all the time, they have to get under the ball to get it into the air. And what that causes is it actually causes the body to stop rotating through the shot, and it gets in a position where the torso is leaning a little bit away from the target, and they're trying to lift the golf ball into the air. Very common in the short game, in that we're now trying to hit a very short shot, and they feel as though if their body rotates through to a complete finish, that the golf ball will go too far. And so they end up with a large backswing. They come back to the golf ball and say to themselves internally, I don't want this to go too far. So they don't allow the hips and the lower body to rotate through, and they just kind of give a swing of the arms at the golf ball. So the deceleration is corrected by one, in the short game in particular, that the backswing isn't too large, so that as they're swinging the arms down, the body can rotate through to face the target and give a place for the golf club to swing back to the inside in the through swing. So deceleration is more a matter of a view of, I need to lift the ball into the air, I need to get under the golf ball, versus let the arms do their job of swinging down to the golf ball. That's going to get to the bottom of the ball and then allow the body to continue to rotate through so the club will move on through to the finish. So short game-wise, shorten the backswing a little bit, make sure that the body's rotating through as the arms are swinging down. Full swing, as the arms are swinging down, sure that we get up off of that trail foot, up onto the toe, and get our body to rotate through to look at the shot. The deceleration is that lack of body finish in the golf swing.
I think, Nicholas used to talk about having good footwork, and I think you touched a little bit about that. And really getting onto that left side for right-handed golfers, and obviously vice versa for left-handed golfers. But, a lot of times people are afraid. They decelerate because they're not confident in the golf swing, and so they try to make adjustments mid-flight and or mid-swing. And I think, what I always say to people is, if you're not practicing, if you're not getting out there and working on your game, when you get out in the golf course and you're faced with maybe what typically would be a half wedge, maybe it's not a full shot in, you've got to, finesse a half wedge in there, and you're not practicing that golf swing. I've got to, instead of hitting a 100-yard wedge shot, I've got to do a 50. And if you're not practicing that and you're not confident with how far and how much of a swing it takes to get you 50 yards for you, you're going to get out in the golf course and you're not going to, and that's what ends up happening. They think, okay, well, I'm going to take this back, and that's going to be too much, and they decelerate. So I think you have to get out there and you have to really practice a lot of different shots and to the point where you're comfortable and confident when you get on the golf course. But this is something I think that many people struggle with, is we see that it doesn't get talked about as much, and thank you for some great points. But deceleration is something that happens a lot more to many amateur golfers than probably what they realize. And you hit some great points right on the head. John, Tiger Woods, this one I think is kind of an interesting, he deemed this to be probably the hardest shot in golf. He was interviewed one time, and he was once asked what was the hardest shot hit in golf, and his answer was a straight shot. But many golfers, of course, struggle with hitting the ball because maybe many of them slice or hook the ball, and they're saying, God, if I could just hit a straight shot, I'd be happy. But straight shots are not necessarily as simple as what people make them out to be. So talk a little bit about that. What is Tiger? I mean, obviously I know you can't get in his head, but what is he really talking about here? What is he trying to say to the average golfer out there when he's saying, hitting a straight shot is probably the hardest shot in golf?
Well, what he's saying is basically it's easier to make a ball curve than it is to make it go straight. And there's a lot of, I'll take this all the way to putting. You'll hear a lot of tour players that want to have break on a putt. They don't want to have a dead straight putt. They would rather have a putt that has a little bit of right to left or a little bit of left to right, depending on what they favor. I know for me, if you said, John, you've got a 4-foot putt to win the Masters, what would you want? I would want an uphill right to left. I wouldn't want an uphill straight putt. I would want an uphill with a little bit of right to left. So that's just something that fits my eye, but it's easier to kind of get your stroke to go or your swing to go on a curve because you're swinging on an arc. You're not playing pool. You're not in a pool stick. You're trying to make the cue ball go straight. In golf, you're swinging at an arc and you're swinging to the side of the golf ball. So it's much easier to make the ball curve one way or the other. Now, the problem is the average golfer will have a 2 to 3 way miss. They'll miss it all different ways. They'll get on one hole and they'll miss it way to the left, and they'll go on the next hole and miss it way to the right. Whereas a tour player, basically, even if they're not swinging well, will play with a one-way miss. So they're able to work the ball and maneuver the ball around the golf course because they can make the ball either fade or draw, depending on the situation. When they get in trouble, they can hook it or slice it out of trouble to get back into the fairway. So, in some ways, I totally agree with that. I mean, if someone asked me the most difficult shot, I would say is the long bunker shot, but I don't have, 15 majors and 80 tournaments or whatever he's won. So if he feels like that's the most difficult shot in golf, then it probably is. But no one hits the ball perfectly straight. There's just if you really watch a ball fly through the air, it will tend to fall one way or the other. But so if I'm if you're playing on a hole, and I've always found that the most difficult holes to play are straight holes, where you have like a 450-yard hole that's just perfectly straight with maybe trouble on both sides. That is difficult because the hole doesn't set up really for a fade. It sets up, or for a draw, it sets up for whatever you want to play it as. And so that can be difficult because you have to make decisions if you're a better player. If you're when it comes to playing on the golf course, my predominant the thing that I would tell the average student is you want to kind of play your ball flight. So if you're a fader of the ball, then you want to tee up on the right-hand side of the tee box, and you want to play that fade all the way down that straight hole. Forget about trying to make it go straight. Play the shot that you normally hit 9 times out of 10. If you draw the ball, tee up on the left-hand side of the tee box and play that draw all the way down that straight hole. That's the way you're going to play your best golf. But if you try to make the ball go straight, what you start doing is you start guiding it. You start using your arms too much. You don't rotate like Jim was talking about, and rotation is your engine in the golf swing. That's where you want to get your power and consistency. So, those are things that will help the average golfer when they're playing and they're trying to hit a straight ball. Forget about trying to hit it straight. Play the shot that you normally do or normally have, and try to have a one-way miss and not a two-way miss. You'll do a lot better if you'll focus on getting rid of the two-way miss than trying to hit a perfectly straight shot.
I think that's. I think you answered that very well. You're exactly right. I mean, if you look at most golf courses, typically they'll set up. Some holes will favor more of a left to right ball flight, and then others right to left. And obviously, one may fit somebody's eye a little bit better. Some are able to play both very confidently. I mean, there's a number of players on tour. Some that might, Nicholas obviously favored hitting a fade, but if need be, he would, could hit a draw, but that was not his comfortable shot. So obviously he played those holes a little bit differently. But you're exactly right. A straight hole, it sounds like, that you'd be licking your chops, but it can be challenging for a lot of golfers that do have a little more bend to the ball. So you have to really comes down to how do you play that, and becomes more of a strategy issue, if you will, than just trying to focus on hitting the ball perfectly straight, because it's not going to happen. Most players do not hit. It might seem relatively straight, but to do that time in, time out, at some point you may need to hit a little bit of a curve on that ball. And so I think that's why some players tend to favor one over the other. Jim, I think this is an interesting question for you. We always hear, I'm the slicer of the ball, or I'm the hooker of the ball. And then there's a few individuals out there that really have problems with both. Doesn't matter what the situation is. They get up there 1 minute, they're, blocking it, pushing it, slicing it out to the right. And then the next time they're, snap hooking it or whatever. And there's just a lot of inconsistency. So what's going on here? How, if it's one way or the other, I mean, usually it might be a little easier fix, but when you've got a golfer that you're now faced with that's hitting all kinds of shots, of inconsistency is the common theme. What's typically going on here?
Well, the challenge one of the challenges in golf is with when the club is meeting the golf ball, there are two ingredients that can truly affect the direction of the golf ball. And I'm saying this based on the fact that we're hitting it fairly close to the center of the club face, because there's a third ingredient, and that's the gear effect of whether it's on the toe or the heel. But let's stay with the idea that we're hitting the golf ball fairly in the center of the face. And typically what we see is someone is likely to slice the golf ball, and their golf swing's working. Let's talk about a right-handed player here. Their golf swing's working in the direction of left, so we would call that out to in, and the club face is looking to the right of that swing path. And so that ball has the tendency to start a bit to the left, curve to the right. And then there's that occasional situation where that club face has squared up to the direction they're swinging, and they see that golf ball go dead left in the direction that they were swinging the golf club. So it's not so much that they are truly an inconsistent swinger. It's a matter of the alignment of the club face relative to the path. And so to address that, we need to narrow the gap of the difference between the club face and the swing path and try to get that club face closer in the same direction as the swing path. And then we can adjust that swing path to get it in the proper direction. So often we react to the fact that the ball has sliced off to the right, and that intuitively says to us, well, if I can aim myself to the left or perhaps swing to the left, it might offset. And in actual fact, that's exacerbated the issue. So we have to try to align that club face in the direction that we're swinging it, and then get the direction we're swinging it into the correct direction, which our terminology would be from the inside working to the inside with the club face fairly square to that swing path. So oftentimes, very rarely have I seen someone slice it once and hook it the next time. They may slice it once and pull it the next time, or they may hook it once and push it the next time. So it's a rarity that they actually hook it one shot and slice it the next. So if we can get that club face and that swing path fairly close to each other, then we can get that swing path in the right direction.
Yeah, again, great point. And I think, Jim, one of the other things to keep in mind that often happens when people do struggle, whatever it may be, whether they're slicing or hooking the ball, a lot of times we see players trying to make a lot of adjustments and, sort of on the fly. Maybe they're strengthening their grip up, or they're weakening the grip, or they're opening their stance a little more, or they're aiming further left, or what have you. And a lot of times they make, changes without really thinking it through. And again, when you're out in the golf course, that's not the time to really make those changes. You're there really to sort of play with the game you've got. Unless it's a practice round, and maybe you're doing a playing lesson, then you can afford to work on some of those things. But when you're out there playing, you've got to sort of work with what you've got to, and then you can go back to the range and get together with your coach and say, hey, these are some things that I've noticed out in the golf course. But more often than not, I think too is that we often see players when they do go one way or the other, or have some inconsistent ball striking, they try to start making a lot of radical changes midstream, and that just, as I mentioned earlier in the show, sort of exacerbates some of the issues. But great discussion tonight, guys. It's hard to believe, but that hour, at least I felt it kind of just flew right by. But some great answers to the questions tonight, and as always, some very thought-provoking answers, and hopefully the listeners will take away some stuff from that. And for those of you maybe tuning in a little bit later, in this conversation, if you go back a little bit later after the end of the show, the recorded version will be available, and at the end of this broadcast I will give you the details on how you can go back and listen, but I want you to stick around because my special guest is going to be coming up here in a moment. But I want to thank you guys for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. As always, I give you a moment to share anything happening in your neck of the woods, and also let the folks know the best way they can reach out. So we'll go in order. John, if you want to go first, and then Jim.
Well, thanks again, Ted, for having us on the show. As always, we appreciate the platform to be on, and you did a great job. And, Jim, I really enjoyed being on tonight's show with you as well. For the listeners out there, if you want to get in touch with me, I invite you to please go to my website. It's deckergolf.com. So DeckerGolf.com. If you go to there, I have videos, full swing, short game, golf fitness, all kind of videos up there, and also information on my book and everything. You can if you're on social media, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I spell my first name Jon, so John Decker, or you can look up DeckerGolf.com either way. And then my book is Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon Audible. There's an Audible version of it as well. And, I'm happy to say I'm writing for Golf Tips Magazine, and my feature Fairways to Heaven and my golf instructional articles are on there. So for the listeners out there, I think, Golf Tips does a great job, and Ted does a great job of putting out good quality instruction. And so I would recommend everyone going and subscribing to that as well. And if you're interested in having me come to your golf course or your church or your junior, awards banquet or something, and doing any speaking, I'm available to do that. You can reach me again on DeckerGolf.com and contact me through the website, and I'll be glad to come to your area. But thanks again, Ted.
Always a pleasure, John.
Ted,
thank you. Jim, go ahead.
Ted, thank you so much for having me. And John, it sure was a pleasure to be on the show with you. Love listening to what you had to say and your words of wisdom about this great game. I can be reached at jim@endicottgolf.com or by phone at 407-460-20. And again, thank you so much, Ted, for having me on the show.
Well, thank you, guys, and thank you for your contributions to Golf Tips Magazine as well. It's very much appreciated, and I know the subscribers enjoy getting their magazines and enjoy reading the many articles and tips that you guys have provided and put it into the magazine. So thank you for that as well. But until next time, have a great weekend, guys, and thank you for joining me on the Coach's Corner segment of Golf Talk Live. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that was Jim Endicott and John Decker joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. We're going to take a quick message from Golf Tips Magazine, and then we'll be right back with tonight's special guest.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros, simple-to-follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
And just a quick note on Golf Tips Magazine. It's available both in print and digital. You can get either or you can get both. So go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today. It also makes, if you're a current subscriber, it makes a great gift. We got the holidays coming up here in just a few months. Giving a gift subscription is a great idea. So I hope you'll do that. Visit golftipsmag.com. All right, I'm very excited to have tonight's guest back. He's been on the show numerous times. In fact, I can't confirm this, but I'm going to have to check in my archives after the show. But I think he's probably been one of the guests that has been on more than any other guest over the years. He's been back many, many times. I enjoy our conversations, and he's been a guest favorite of mine for the last several years. And like I said, I think he's been on here certainly close, if not more than anybody else, but I appreciate it. Of course, I'm talking about Dr. Bernacki. He's a community-based, self-employed family physician for over 35 years who loves this great game of golf. And interestingly, he's played this game in a variety of ways, including with everything from hickory to modern era shafts, always playing, of course, the appropriate period golf ball. He's also been very active in youth development and certainly drug prevention activities. He completed a leadership role with the First Tee of Pittsburgh and serves as the president of the Golf Heritage Society. And we're going to talk about many things there and about their national convention coming up in just a little less than a month's time. So please welcome my very special guest back to Golf Talk Live, Dr. Bernacki. Good evening, Bern. How are you?
Ted, I am fantastic. Wow, what an intro. I hope I can live up to that, my friend.
You can. I have no doubt. I know you will. And you know, all kidding aside, you know, I'm serious. I got thinking about this, and I thought, you know, I had you on obviously earlier in the year, but you've been back several times, you know, over the years. And I was trying, so I'm going to have to get the number and we'll firm it up here. But I think it's at least 6 times that you've been on the show, and I love having you. It's always a great conversation, and I always feel like I learned something new, and hopefully I know that you know that you'll enjoy it as well. But thank you for being my special guest again tonight.
Well, thank you, Ted. I always enjoy being with you on your show, and it's wonderful to follow your awesome line of guests, Jim and John in the Coach's Corner. That was fantastic, and I just enjoy the conversation, and I hope your audience enjoys you and I having such a good time as much as we do.
I know they do. I know they do, and that's why I'm happy to have you back. So we're going to talk about, I know you want to talk about the National Convention coming up October 11th to 4th. It's going to be held at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. And I believe it's the 52nd. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are 53 years old, and we missed a year because of COVID, so it's 52.
Right. So we're going to talk about that in a few moments and get into some of the specifics about that, because I know that that's something that you're looking forward to happening here, and hopefully the weather's going to be good for you guys. But I want to talk about, if we can, because obviously there's always new people tuning into the program, and I want them just to have a little bit of a background and understanding about the Golf Heritage Society. So when and how did and I'm going to call it GHS as you guys do just for simplicity, but of course we're talking about the Golf Heritage Society. When did GHS begin? When and how did it begin?
So in 1970, 2 gentlemen, a golf club, antique golf club and ball collector, Joe Murdoch from Dayton area, and he got together with a book collector from Philadelphia area. And those 2 guys began correspondence, writing back and forth, and decided, hey, wouldn't it be great if we started a society? So they did, and their correspondence became the basis of our now 53-year-old journal called now The Golf. It was called The Bulletin when it was a real folksy back and forth thing, but now it's a formal, organized, wonderful journal that we do quarterly, and it has amazing content about collecting and auctions and history and people, places, and things in the game of golf. And it in itself is worth the price of our membership. So how's that for explaining how we got started?
That was perfect. And we're going to talk about membership as well. And I'm a member now, and glad to be a part of it. And I get the quarterly publication as well, and it's a great read. So for anybody that's not a member, you need to, if for no other reason, just to get that publication that comes out quarterly. It's a lot of great information in there. And it's well worth the membership. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So give us an idea, if you wouldn't mind, is what has been or what is the overall mission of GHS? What is your core mission of the Golf Heritage Society?
Ted, I'm going to give you and the audience 2 responses. The one is the one everyone will understand. We love the game of golf. We love to get together and have fun around the game of golf. And we do that in a variety of ways. So if you'll permit me, our formal mission statement reads like this. The Golf Heritage Society seeks to promote an appreciation for the history and the traditions of golf and to foster friendship among its enthusiasts worldwide, including golfers, writers, historians, and collectors of the game's artifacts and memorabilia. So, you know, we started as collectors, but we realized we had so many of these different kind of people who had their own interest in the game of golf, and they had their own types of collections and interests and knowledge of history. We decided it would be a better name to call ourselves the Golf Heritage Society, acknowledging the depth of the interest of all of our members and participants.
And I think that's a great move on GHS's behalf to be able to do that, because you're right. And there's certainly obviously the heritage and sort of the history of the game is certainly important. And I think it's important for not just, the elite players who have been around for a while, the Jack Nicklauses, the late Arnold Palmer, and that obviously were part of the history of the game. And obviously there was many even before them. But I think it's also interesting. There are so many different genres now part of this, as you mentioned, from an artistic standpoint and so on. So it's not just the history, but there's other components now that have been added over the years. And I think it makes for a well-rounded society to be able to offer different perspectives and to be able to offer to its membership and future potential members a variety of different options for them to get excited about, correct?
No, it's true, Ted. The objectives that we have listed is hosting regional and national meetings to facilitate that fellowship and collaboration, creating opportunities to share knowledge and exchange those golf artifacts and memorabilia. So, sometimes we get together to play golf. Sometimes we get together to talk about, our collections of, and there are subgroups forming. And in the coming year, we're going to go further with our use of social media, Facebook, and what have you, to organize our groups of folks who have specialty interests, let's say in golf architecture or golf art and landscapes and those kinds of things. Put these folks together to start to exchange both information, knowledge, elevate the knowledge of the new person, and also expand their appreciation for connecting those artifacts to the history of the game of golf. If you think about it, every single artifact has its own stories. What is it? Where did it come from? Why is it important? And what does it represent? And these artifacts almost speak out loud, telling their story. And we're proud of saying that our members know the stories of these artifacts and bring the history of the game of golf alive. It's a lot of fun.
I know, Bern, that you had many opportunities to talk to, individuals of a variety of different ages and so forth about GHS. And when you think back to some of the questions, you've taken questions over the years from obviously some of the participants in some of these discussions. What has been some of the, feedback as far as what people didn't know about the game of golf until they listened to that conversation? What's some of the that you get is, I didn't know that about golf, or, I never realized that the golf was played that way. What is some of the common responses that you get when you have these, different,
that's great. That's a great
outings?
question. Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and it's unfortunate that we only have, what did you say, 2 hours? But two things come up a lot. One, when I was in Scotland with my good friend Pete Georgety and the group of golf writers, I was sort of a tag along, and they were sharing new publications coming up. And one gentleman wrote a book called The Short Game of Golf. And he was, I don't even know if it's yet published, but he was working on it. And he was telling us the story. Like we in the United States really adore baseball and football. Well, we play those games on whatever turf we have, wiffle ball and stick ball in the back alley. And when the golf ball, the gutty ball, was formed, and everybody started to whack it around with whatever golf club they had or could get their hands on, everybody in Scotland embraced this game, and they had their own short golf game. They had 1 or 2 holes in their yard, and then there was, of course, continuing the formal golf courses, mostly occupied by the wealthy. But that's why Scotland was called the home of golf, because all these folks the game, whacking around the gutty ball with whatever golf club that they could fashion or purchase. It was a great revelation to me when I heard this, and it just made so much sense. But these people, the Scots, embraced the game because of the change in the golf ball from the feathery ball, which no one could really afford except the wealthy,
right,
to ball that they could make themselves, melt it down, cook it down, shape it, and bang it around in the short spaces that they had. That was one of the most exciting and interesting stories that I like to share.
And another, again, go ahead. Yep, please go ahead.
Yeah, the other one is the evolution of the ball itself. So when in May, I had the opportunity to visit with some of our young people at the first tee, and they were having just a regular lesson. And, the Sunday before, the day before was golf, Hickory Golf, World Hickory Golf Day. And I decided to go up to the Muni where we have the first tee Pittsburgh and go hang out. And the instructors were actually working and with the youngsters, and there was a woman coach, Coach Liz, and I met her for the first time, and I saw her before the lesson. I said, hey, would it be okay if I talked a little bit of golf history to the young ladies that you have? And she had 11 ladies there. So she said, sure, of course. So I usually keep a few golf balls in my pocket or in my bag, and I had a chunk of gutta percha, that's Malaysian rubber, unformed. Mm-hmm. Then I had one that formed and pressed into a mold but not trimmed. It looked like Saturn. And then I had one that was trimmed and so I said, I'm going to give these to the gals and see if they can figure this out. Oh, my gosh, what was supposed to be a 5-minute interaction, they asked questions for darn near an hour. And Coach Liz, she just loved it. Said, I learned so much. We had so much fun. It was a great time. So there you go.
And that's the thing is, I think if people really understood the history, and it's unfortunate that, for the most part, if you ask people that have never played this game before, they'll refer to what they see on television, of course, the tours, and again through heavy marketing, and that's their perception of the game. But they really don't understand the true history of the game and how it sort of got to where it is, and some of the inventions along the way that have changed the game from early development of the golf ball, as you mentioned, with feathers, and then using different rubber compounds and so forth. But people really don't understand that. They only sort of get a very minimal view of what golf is, and that's what we see on television. So there's so much more to it. And this brings me to the point, with a GHS or Golf Heritage Society membership. Is this open to anybody? And what's included with that membership? Because if somebody's listening to the show and is thinking about maybe, that might be something that would be of interest to me. Am I able to join? And if so, what's involved? What's included with the membership?
Of course, Ed, yes. Everyone who loves the game of golf is invited. And this is young or old, male or female, any background whatsoever is welcome. And, the best way that I could point you in the right direction is our website, which is golfheritage.org. And when you open golfheritage.org, you learn a little bit about us, the homepage, who we are, and what our people do. And you get a lot of flavor for the kinds of things we do. And, the groups of collectors or interest groups, we're now calling them, because, you have the people who come from the architecture and the course superintendents. These folks are incredible historians. They understand the ground, and they nurture the golf courses we play on, and they know a lot about who played what important event, when and where, and it's so much fun to welcome them into our fold It's not just collectors and players. It's everybody who loves the game of golf at golfheritage.org. Our dues are $50. We're keeping our dues the same through the end of the year. Costs have gone up a little bit. Our production, which described to you the golf, it's now mostly 40 pages. When it was the bulletin, it was a record of 2 or 3 or 4 pages, black and white, kind of Xeroxed. And now we have a professionally produced, distributed publication that will engage you and educate you and elevate your interest in the game. So I assure your listeners that this is an opportunity for them to really understand and appreciate the game in a much broader and deeper way.
And as you mentioned, the Golf Heritage Society is not just solely about the history of the game, but there's so many other opportunities there for a variety of different genres to get involved. So, if you're somebody that's, maybe an artist or what have you, and, there's things that maybe you'd like to share with the organization as well, there's ways that you can get involved with that. And that all of the information can be available. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Ted, if I may say, the benefits really have expanded in the last several years. When we had COVID, it was really difficult and unfortunate for us to be unable to travel and come together locally, regionally. But, we kind of reinvented ourselves. Our board started to get together with a Zoom call and use that technology. Then we got the idea to create a series for our members to invite notables. Someone that comes to mind is Bobby Jones IV. And we had a 1-hour interview with Mr. Jones IV, and he told stories of what it was like to be the grandson of and what happened, recollection, as dad got older, grandfather got older and retired from the game, and what went on in Augusta and how the family was treated. And it was fascinating who ran the show. So we have probably now 20 of those interviews that we do on Zoom. We keep them in an archive available to our members to go and enjoy at their leisure. Another one that I just love is Ron Lucas. Ron Lucas was a PGA pro. Interesting story. He was dropped off at Latrobe Country Club because he was from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, home of Arnold Palmer. And his dad said, youngster, I want you to make some money caddying. So when he got out of the car, he had a limp because he had a mild case of polio. Deacon Palmer, Arnold Palmer's dad, saw him and said, kid, come over here. And he said, you had polio, didn't you? And he said, yes, sir, I did, but I can do this job. He says, that's the attitude. He says, I'm going to help you learn the game, learn to be a great caddy, and we'll see where it goes. That youngster, Ron Lucas, became a golf professional and the golf professional at Latrobe Country Club, working for Arnold Palmer and family.
Wow.
So, fascinating stories that we come across. Ron told a lot of his stories regarding the generosity of the Palmer family and foundation, and Arnold and Deacon Palmer and Winnie and their foundation in its formation. Fascinating stuff that you just won't find in books or magazines. These are members.
Yeah, and what a great story to share as well, especially about Mr. Palmer and his family and how they reached out and helped so many people over the years. And Ron obviously was a benefactor of that generosity. And, you're right. This is things that you can get available to becoming a member of the Golf Heritage Society. And again, we'll give that information again a little bit later on. So let's get on to the schedule. As you mentioned, because of the 1 year with COVID, even though it's been around 53 years, this is going to be technically your 52nd national convention. So which is taking place this October, just in a few short weeks, 11th to the 14th in Lexington, Kentucky, and it's going to be held at the Embassy Suites Hotel. First off, what is the purpose of the convention, And is the convention open to anyone to attend? Do you have to be a member of the GHS, or is it open to general public?
There are different parts of this, and let me run through them. We like to get together and play golf. We will play a warm-up. Traditionally it's called the warm-up hickory event, but people come and play hickory for the first time. They'll play scramble. Some of the guys like to practice because the next day we're going to have our formal tournament, both hickory and classic club and modern club divisions. So we get together on the Wednesday and play golf and, of course, tell stories. We have a tradition at our main hotel called room trading. And at the end of the week, we'll have a giant get-together with all these golf collectibles of every imaginable type: balls, clubs, books, print materials, ceramics, artwork, you name it, it'll be there. But the people who are bringing these materials for the trade show have them stored in their hotel room, and we bounce from room to room, seeing our friends, interacting, and some folks like to build their collections and make the deal before that item gets to the trade show. So there are shoppers, and there are people going around to learn more about collecting a certain thing. And that's one of the beauties of the fellowship, the knowledge base, but also the willingness to share and educate and bring a collector, a new person along to understand the history and the significance of the collections that they have. It is so much fun. So room trading is part of our tradition. We have a formal educational session. And we will, this year, we will talk about the history of the driver. And we have some of our members who are really, focused on the history and the clubs and the development, and they put on a fabulous educational. That is for members. That is part of the registration that our members pay. The end of the week trade show is open to the public and free, and we welcome the world to come and see, learn. If they're collectors or want to kind of learn about what do people collect, it could be simple things like tees and scorecards and pencils, or high-end things like trophies, medals that have their own significance of history and incredible dollar and economic value. So we have everything in between, and the trade show is that. We will have the Friday night, the 13th, we will have our banquet, Hall of Fame induction, and we have just a wonderful slate of inductees to our Hall of Fame this year. It will be really great for us to honor these individuals. And also I noticed too, you've got a lot of great things happening on that throughout those few days. And I also noticed too, part of this year at this year's convention, you're going to be honoring two of Lexington's own accomplished amateur player Marion Miley and tour player Gabe Brewer. Tell us a little bit about that. And now, is this something? First off, is this something when you have it at at the various locations that you try to seek out some local talent, if you will, in the golf industry and try to honor them there, or is this something that's new? No, that's a tradition of ours, and it's a really good lead-in, Ted, because we partner with USGA, and they traditionally attend our meeting and enhance our meeting by bringing something of their treasure trove, both collectibles and educationals to talk about. Last year we were in Indianapolis, so the museum curators came and brought items that were in their collection and museum that spoke to the history of Indiana golf. This year we will be, of course, in the great state of Kentucky, home of Lexington, home of Gabe Brewer, winner of a Masters, and his caddy will be there and present and making the presentation to the membership, talking about his recollections of working with Gabe Brewer and that very special Masters win. And, of course, we'll have tons of Gabe Brewer memorabilia for show and sale. So that will be great fun. And, yes, it's a tradition for us to try to honor the host state and city wherever we can. And people may or may not know about Marion Miley, M-I-L-E-Y, a brilliant female amateur turned professional whose life was ended quite tragically early in her career as she and her mom were at the Lexington Country Club as it was broken into for a probable robbery, and it turned into a fight scene and a double murder. It was just a horrible thing. The woman who wrote the book, The Murder of Marion Miley, Beverly Bell, will be with us on the Thursday. I believe that's the 12th. Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll be at Lexington Country Club for a gathering and interaction to celebrate Lexington golf and Kentucky golf, and it will be great fun to enjoy that history. But sadly, Beverly Bell will again share some of the intimate details of the story on the book that she wrote that happened right there on that site. So yes, it'll be a real tribute to the state of Kentucky golf.
If somebody was attending for, say, the first time, maybe they've never attended, what could they do or how could they participate to really get most of the experience? If they want to come and obviously they want to learn more, not just about GHS, but about the history of golf and so forth, there's obviously a lot of opportunities. If they were a first-time attendee, what would you recommend that they participate or certainly invest some time in to really get an overall experience of the national convention?
Great question. Ted, I would love it if a lot of your listeners tonight would go online and learn a little bit about us and the organization and the convention map out like we were talking about it. If they joined, they would be able to be welcomed right into the educational sessions that we will have, and it's sort of a 2-day thing for that. That's a lot of fun. Of course, people can come to the hotel and participate in the room trading without registering for the convention at all. But as a registered member, you're welcome to participate in the golf formally for the competition and or get to know you scramble golf with, Hickory or Classic Club if it's a first time for you, and you'll be matched up with people who are just delighted to show you the ropes, so to speak. So those opportunities exist for people who come and sign up as members. Of course, our Hall of Fame is dinner is again part of the membership and registration price. The trade show all day on the Saturday there at the hotel is wide open, free to the public, and we welcome invite people who are not yet ready to commit to the organization. Come look and see, and we will have a table to welcome and explain about the organization, introduce you to folks where you may have an interest. For example, Ted comes in and says, I have a few golf pencils. Who in the room can tell me about the top 100 golf courses in the world and in the United States and in every state, and let me know if I have the right start to get my pencil collection, and where can I find more? Boom, he's over there. And we do that all day long to match people up, and they can come and shop and spend money and expand a collection that they are building, or they can just learn and kind of take it all in and just enjoy the breadth of the game of golf in its many aspects.
What about if somebody from the other side wanted to participate, as an example, in the annual trade show? How would they go about doing it? If they're maybe a collector and and wanted to participate in that, is there any special requirements for them?
It's another great question. I think if you go online and reach out to us or give us a call, through the society, we will find a way to get you there and register you for a table if you have collectibles and want to liquidate your or share your collection. And we see that. We have people whose families, someone has passed on, and these collectibles remain in the family. So the best thing to do is reach out to us, and we will find a way to assist you. Sometimes that's done at the convention, and sometimes we, find a way to pair you up with someone in that region where you live, and we can help out. We can make ourselves available. We like it when these are our members, but we're very open to helping folks because their families had been members for long periods of time. So there's a lot of ways that we slice and dice it, but we're there to make friends and develop fellowship through the game of golf. I think I can give you a...
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think I can give a telephone number. Our administrative coordinator for membership services is Terry Petrucelli. Terry also works with me in my medical office, and the phone that we use for the Golf Heritage Society is 281-404-4643. I'll repeat that, 281-404-4643. That's Terry Petrucelli. And Terry fields all kinds of phone calls from our members to re-up on their membership, to people who want to know more about the organization, and we put you in touch with the right person the best we can.
Well, it sounds great. You provided a lot of information, and I think the best way for people to really appreciate what you're talking about here tonight is to certainly visit the website, which is golfheritage.org or ORG. All of the information, including the upcoming National Convention, which is taking place, as I mentioned, October 11th to the 14th, being held at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. You can certainly register and partake in a lot of different functions that are going on. So I strongly urge everybody to visit the website tonight when we finish the broadcast here in momentarily, golfheritage.org. I want to also just touch on something real quick here if we can, and that is obviously any good organization or special function certainly relies on certainly sponsors and those that give, whether it be financially or of their time. Is there any particular, I know you probably can't list them all, but is there anyone particular that you'd like to thank for all of their contributions towards this upcoming convention? Any sponsors that you want to recognize at the time?
Yes, there are. A long-time close sponsor is the Golf Auction. They're an auction house that has been very friendly to us. There are several golf auction houses that we work with to help our members and their families distribute collectibles when it's the right time to pass them on. But in particular, the Golf Auction has been a very good friend. We have started something new in the last 2 years to find connections to those golf courses that you cannot play unless you have a wonderful opportunity. We have had auctions where Marion Golf Course and Oakmont Golf Course and several others that we have lined up, through the generosity of a member and the friendship of the Golf Auction, will help us raise money for the Golf Heritage Society, and this has been very helpful for us. We have our membership, we have some advertising in our magazine, but these other revenue streams sustain us. They're important. And for an individual to bid on and be able to take two more friends or three more friends and play golf, for example, with Bob Ford, who is the announcer for the U.S. Open in perpetuity because he's the past golf professional at Oakmont and Seminole and a dear friend of the First Tee Pittsburgh. These are phenomenal. Bob hosted that group, took them to lunch, toured the Oakmont clubhouse, and they played golf. So these are opportunities that our members have, and through the friendship of the company, the golf auction, helping us do this really at their cost, that maximizes our opportunity to sustain the Golf Heritage Society and keep our membership costs as low as possible. The other one opportunity that we had this year was to find a first major sponsor for our publication, The Golf. And through an interesting set of circumstances, the gentleman who developed Bandon Dunes Golf up there in Oregon, Michael Kaiser, he is a wonderful entrepreneur, historian, and lover of the game of golf. And his development of these golf courses became a passion of one of our board members, Taba Dale, who wrote about the book that Michael Kaiser wrote. And she reached out to him to ask him if he wouldn't consider becoming a sponsor for the Golf Heritage Society. Well, he took the packet that Taba and our team sent him, and he called her. He said, I want to be a member today. I want to be a sponsor. So on the back cover of our latest issue of our journal, The Golf, which just came out yesterday, I got it in the mail, is this fabulous full-page picture of Bandon Dunes, a couple holes that I haven't visited yet, but I will. And it's just a wonderful tribute to Michael Kaiser and his wonderful team, Dream Golf. So I want to reach out and thank Michael publicly and their team, and encourage everybody to learn about his book and his creations of golf courses that we all should go and play.
Fantastic. Just to remind everybody, of course, we're talking about the upcoming Golf Heritage Society National Convention, which is taking place October 11th to 14th, being held at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. Whether you're from the area or you're just passing through, it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the history of the game and partake in many of the different activities going on. And it's probably a good idea, especially at a very affordable price of just $50 for an annual membership to join the Golf Heritage Society. And you can do that by visiting the website, golfheritage.org. All of the information there is including more details about the upcoming national convention and, of course, other events that are going to be taking place throughout the rest of the season. But a lot of good information there, some great contact information. If you want to learn more, again, visit golfheritage.org, and all of the details are there. But, Bern, I just want to say once again, thank you very much for all that you're doing to help really foster, believe it or not, the growth of the game, because really to understand the growth of the game, you have to understand where its roots began. And you at GHS do a great job in getting the information out there. And I think more people that get involved and become members, that word is going to even spread that much further. But I want to wish you all the best at this year's convention. And I know it's going to be successful. And I appreciate you taking time spending with me here on Golf Talk Live. It's always a pleasure. And I look forward to you coming back again and joining me in the future podcast.
Ted, thank you very much. We love the modern game and everything that preceded it. So we're all about appreciating it, and the opportunity to speak with you and your audience once again is a treasure. Thank you again, my friend. Take care and be well.
You too as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Tonight's special guest, Dr. Bernacki, president of the Golf Heritage Society. You can learn a little bit about him too if you visit the website. But again, we talking a little bit about the beginnings of GHS and really what their overall mission has been, and obviously the opportunity for you, the listeners, or anybody out there that has a strong interest to learn about many of the beginnings of the game. Many people, including myself, there's a lot of things that I still don't know. I've learned a little bit along the way, but there's so many things. And I think it's important to really understand how golf got its beginning and how it's evolved over the years and how it's become really a game for everybody to play. It doesn't matter who you are or what your background is. There are opportunities there. You just have to know where to look for them. And the Golf Heritage Society is a great place to start. Their national convention, as I mentioned, again, is October 11th to the 14th at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. So if you're going to be passing through Kentucky and or planning to stay there, maybe you're taking a short trip up that area, this might be something that you might want to consider adding to the bucket list. And there's a lot of other great opportunities in the area to visit and do other things that are available, other things that you can do while you're there too. But this is something, if you're interested in the game and learning more about it, you can. It's open essentially really to anybody. Again, go to golfheritage.org to learn more and to be able to understand the society that much more. Again, I want to thank my earlier guests, John Decker and Jim Endicott, for joining me on Coach's Corner panel. Thank you guys for doing a great job always. And once again, a very special thank you to tonight's interview guest, Dr. Bernacki, president of the Golf Heritage Society. On that note, I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. I hope you enjoyed this evening's broadcast, and I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.